That's the first thing I wanted to ask you about, which is that we had a very compelling call talking about whether or not Trump is enough to drain the swamp, whether or not a third party is possible. I don't think it is. I don't think is necessary. But this seems to be the big struggle here, Dr. G. It seems to be the big struggle for the America First crowd, MAGA America, is that the embrace of the establishment seems to be necessary to get anything done, yet it does set back the MAGA agenda as well. And it's a very tough balance, and I don't think we're any closer to solving the best way to handle it after Tuesday.
Look, I completely understand the impatience. You know, we've seen the insanity of the 8 years under Obama, where political correctness dominated our lives to the extent at which, you know, the federal government was deciding that young boys could use the girls' changing rooms just because they felt like it. If you know,
Yes.
on Tuesday they thought they were Julie instead of John. So I understand the impatience, but remember, we are the conservatives. We don't believe in kangaroo courts. We don't believe in, you know, doing things in the wrong way. That's the left, and it's going to take time to do this properly. You know, my prediction is, look, you've got to put it into context. Everybody has to calm down, count to 10, take a deep breath, and put it into context. We allowed them to take over our culture for the last 30, 40 years. If
Maybe
you think
longer.
that's going to be solved, if you think that's going to be solved
Yes.
in 2 years, you have no sense of what Andrew Breitbart was talking about when he wrote his book, Rights to Indignation. We're going to need 8 years of President Trump, 8 years of President Pence, and then maybe we will have drained the swamp 50%.
Yeah, and I think we're going to need about 3 terms of Don Jr. I like to cite that just to see if anyone in Media Matters
Right, paying attention.
Yeah, is paying attention. Marlowe calls for 3 terms of the president's son. So, Dr. G, I think that's wise words, and I love that you and I are similar in that we're happy warriors. We tend to sort of be optimistic about where things are going to go a long term. However, there's a lot of stuff that is not happy time. It's not a particularly happy week for MAGA. I think a lot of it could have been much worse. But one place I want to start is the firing of Jeff Sessions, which the president had made up his mind a long time ago. He deserves to have the attorney general he wants. And I've debated with this audience about this issue more than any other issue because I'm a huge Sessions booster and much of the audience is not. But where I am concerned is the immigration agenda. And this is something you were national security editor for Breitbart News. There's simply no one else in the administration right now who's coming close to America First immigration policy. And do you have any sense of where the immigration agenda goes?
Okay, so first things first, on the MAGA agenda, again, put it into perspective. Every single, bar 2 exceptions, every single candidate that embraced the president and embraced MAGA won their races. Where I live in Virginia, Barbara Comstock, the arch rhino, who in her last pamphlet to my house didn't mention the president once or MAGA, was crushed by the Democrat candidate. So MAGA is fine. Look at who embraced the president and how they did. With regards to immigration, I know this is going to make some heads blow up on our side. And with regards to Sessions, hopefully now you all understand why I have said for months now that Q is a load of garbage. Q is tinfoil hat conspiracy theory that makes our side look kooky. So please drop the QAnon garbage.
Okay, Dr. G, expand on this because I have not, because I'm sort of with you, but I admit I went with my gut on that and did not overly spend a lot of time thinking it through because I pretty much knee-jerked where you were and was not convinced that I need to dedicate a lot of time to it. So I've dedicated virtually 0 time to it on this show. Give us a little more detail and nuance on that. What's QAnon? What's it all about? And why do you say it's garbage?
Right. So QAnon is a personal group of people who regularly post, cryptic Nostradamus-like predictions about what the president is really doing and how the president is signaling to his base about what's going on. And it's classic snake oil merchants. This person has no direct connection to the president, is not plugged into the administration, takes 10% of the truth, mixes it with 90% of garbage, and then tries to convince you that he's the inner sanctum. I have to control myself here. It's rubbish. Okay, so number one, Jeff Sessions had to go. QAnon was wrong, and there's your proof. Now, with regard to the immigration agenda, I hope the Democrats aren't listening, but I am still very, very confident because you know who's still in the machine at the highest level. They may not be a cabinet member, but as long as Stephen Miller is in there inside the White House, writing the president's speeches, being the chief advisor on immigration, we are very, very solid, Alex.
I hope you're correct on that. It just doesn't seem like Dr. G, and I know that you and I agree on just about everything. I'm a huge Stephen Miller fan, as you know. Stephen was very close to Larry Elder in Los Angeles around the same time I was when we were teenagers. So I was hip to Stephen Miller long before the rest of the country was and have incredible faith in him. I just don't know if that's enough. I just feel like the establishment has been so co-opted by this White House, and I'm just very concerned that Miller on his own is not going to be enough to deliver that America First immigration plan we promised.
Well, look at what's happening on the border. So the president isn't backing down. When it comes to this imminent threat to our national security, he's not backing down 1 inch. He's deploying U.S. armed forces. He's deploying the Marines. He has said unequivocally that you will not be allowed to illegally cross the border. And also, I think everybody missed this. Again, I hope the left isn't listening to your show. If they're wise, they are. DHS, the White House, issued a very short statement with regards to what's happening at the border right now, and everybody, even the conservatives, missed the most important sentence in that statement. They said that if you come across the border illegally in any way, if you do not come through the regular channels, you will never be allowed to apply for asylum. Now that's hardcore, Alex. That is seriously hardcore.
That is hardcore. And if the president does go out of his way to reinforce to the MAGA base that he is on immigration, he's taking it seriously, that would be great news, because sometimes there is an overcorrection because a lot of us are concerned about the state of the immigration agenda at this point. If the president does get concerned about the base and wants to do us a solid, that would be awesome. And so expand a little bit more on. Yeah, go ahead.
Just stop there. Just stop there for a second, because we do know who's listening to this on our side. So that is the key point, Alex. You just made the key point. So inside the machine, Bill, Mercy, Sarah, Kellyanne. Did you just hear what Alex said? That's the key thing. If you want to communicate to the base, the key thing to communicate now is the president remains strong on immigration. He's not backing down on the wall. So, they'll get the message. I'll help them get the message. But you're absolutely right. We need to communicate this, show a little love to our side, but it can be done.
Yeah, it sounds like it can, Dr. G. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, again, is with me. The new book, Why We Fight, available now. You can pick that up. It's got some great history in it as well, and some great values for MAGA America. And so that's what we're trying to unpack. So any lessons here that you learned from the election, any surprises for you, Dr. G, from Tuesday?
Yeah, it's not a surprise. It's just a reaffirmation that the left will lie, steal, and cheat as much as they can. I mean, what's going on in Florida right now is absolutely incredible. I'm going to be guest hosting Mike Gallagher's show in about 40 minutes, and I'm going to be starting with the Florida recap. I mean, this is banana republic tactics. I mean, 30,000 votes just miraculously appear or disappear in 72 hours? This is not America. So we've got to find these people. The people who are breaking election laws need to be investigated, charged, and prosecuted. The consequence of the midterms Remember, Hillary told us that if we will be civil if we win. Well, they won the House. They squeaked by in the House. And what happened? Jim Acosta rants and raves with the president. And then right after that, Antifa uses violence against Tucker Carlson's home, almost smashing down his front door and destroying property. This is going to be the next 2 years.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that next. That's exactly where I was going to go with the Antifa question, is that there's Tucker Carlson, just the beginning. I'm so thrilled that the media reacted overwhelmingly to this, making it a massive international story. But then there are folks like Matt Iglesias over at Vox.com who defended Antifa, legitimized the rioting. And they are a terrorist group. So they're treating the attack on Tucker Carlson as a hate crime. But the fact that many of Americans, and these are Americans that have been bolstered by CNN, bolstered by the Washington Post, believe that you have the right to terrorize family members of conservative journalists and thinkers is a new low in modern America. I'm not saying it hasn't happened in the past, but this is a new low.
No, it is, and it goes straight to the theory of, the Overton window. What would have been totally unacceptable 2 years ago, the left has made acceptable. And there is a direct link. I'm sorry. Abilio Jim Acosta, who for some reason is ashamed of his heritage, Abilio Acosta behaved in ways that were completely unacceptable prior to a Trump presidency. So he's doing things that that nobody would have allowed to occur. And the same thing happens outside the home of Tucker Carlson when his wife is home alone by herself. We have a mob, literally a mob, trying to break down his front door. So the really interesting thing is how the left has reacted, because you see these people at Vox, you see these other individuals, their comments are so telling, because they're saying things like, well, this is, tactically, not advantageous. We should, which means what? Which means if it were tactically advantageous, this would be fine. So it's just the way that it's coming off that disturbs them. But in principle, they are absolutely copacetic with intimidation as a ploy to use against your political adversaries. And this will get very out of hand very quickly unless law enforcement reacts very, very tough with very tough responses. And the idea that the DC police is looking into it, that's not enough, Alex.
Yeah, Dr. G, you, like me, are a student of the left, and the left has always had a totalitarian nature to it, and they've always pursued control of speech, control of the opposition. This is 100% universal across the board, and yet I don't even see people on the right describing it in these terms. I don't think that the Republicans did an effective job campaigning against the left in the primary. I think they left some votes on the table, but the threat of the left is so overwhelming right now. This is a clear example of it. Hopefully this wakes people up.
Yeah, this is really crucial. It is not hyperbole to say that these tactics are the tactics of totalitarians. When you use force, the threat of violence to shut down the speech of those who disagree. Because remember, Tucker Carlson is not a white supremacist Klan, a grand wizard. And let's not forget the Democrats created the KKK. But Tucker Carlson is a talk show host on cable TV. And you're intimidating his family. That's the totalitarian way. And it is absolutely crucial that we use that kind of language until these people go and hide in the dark and never show their face in public again.
Yeah, and it's such a great point. And Tucker's incredibly influential, so I'm not denying that. And he is a thought leader, but he also does have guys from Antifa on his show. And so if you think the real problem is one network and a handful of shows, by the way, half the stuff Fox has been doing lately, I think, has undermined the president, which we don't have to get into right now. I can get into that down the road on this broadcast. But Fox did some horrible stuff lately. You got a couple of hosts you don't like, so you start torturing their family and their children. I mean, and the fact that this isn't universally condemned, there were exceptions in terms of the outrage over this. Very terrible. It's terrible, Dr. G. I got a couple of quick questions left for you. You've been generous with your time per usual. You can pick up Why We Fight now, also Dr. G's new show. When does it debut, by the way, on Salem?
New Year's Day, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 West Coast.
Cool. Very, very important. I think that's a big move for you. It's a big move for them. So it should be good stuff. But let's talk about a couple of key things. One thing I observed, you and I typically spend our time together talking about foreign policy and national security issues where you're an expert. Not so much this election cycle, which I think is probably a good thing, but not a big foreign policy, national security election. Why is that? And were you surprised that was the case?
Well, who was it? Was it Bill Clinton who said it's the economy, stupid? At the end of the day, you and I are wonks. We love the international stuff. But,
yeah, James Carville.
All elections. Hello?
Yeah. I think you're referring to James Carville, Dr. G.
Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you not hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, it really does boil down to domestic issues in most elections. Why wasn't national security an issue? Because what has the president done in the last 22 months? He's secured all the things that need securing. Who talks about ISIS? You can't talk about ISIS because the caliphate is gone. The left isn't going to talk about North Korea because the president is on the cusp of making, a 65-year-old conflict an actual, resolved peacefully. So these are the reasons it's not on the front burner. And I think when you have 4.2% GDP growth rate, when you have functionally 0% unemployment, those are the kinds of key issues that are going to drive voters to the polls. So, it may be a sad day for you and I that it's not about national security, but it's really about pocketbooks, and that's as it should be.
Okay, so last one today. This is not going to be a happy talk question, Dr. G. We do have Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi coming in. In all likelihood, she's going to have a battle on her hands because she doesn't have the votes yet, but she's got the money, right? And the money talks in politics. And what does that look like? Again, another one where people should have seen this coming, that these were the stakes. Pelosi's going to be the speaker. What does that mean?
I can reveal to you that on the night of the election, very early on, as we realized which way things were going, the president called up Nancy Pelosi, and it wasn't just for some kind of pablum congratulation. It was to send a very clear message that she is going to have to do business with the president. Let's remember one thing. We still have the Senate. Appropriations and oversight may be in the House purview, but the more powerful House, the one that deals with the heavy, heavy cultural stuff, like federal judicial appointments, the Supreme Court, ambassadorships, political appointments, that's the Senate. Nancy Pelosi is not in control of America. Donald Trump is still the president. We're stronger in the Senate, and there was no blue wave, and Nancy knows that.
So do you think she comes to the table and negotiates with the president, maybe starts with an infrastructure bill, which I think would be a no-brainer, or do you think she's just going to focus on investigating and obstruction and resistance?
Look, she's going to have the crazies yapping at her heels for impeachment. When you've got Adam Schiff for intelligence and Maxine Waters on financial services, she's going to have to, somehow placate them. But there will be a limit to how much she can give into the radicals, because if there is an infrastructure deal on the table, if she denies that, if she turns her back on that the same way she did on the DACA deal the president promised her, then that is not good for Nancy. So there may be a lot of noise, a lot of chatter, a lot of fireworks, but at the end of the day, Nancy will have to do a deal with the president on things that are important to us.
Yeah, I think the stakes are so high for her, and this is one of those silver linings to the Tuesday results. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, author of a couple of books, including the latest, Why We Fight. Dr. G, it's going to be an exciting couple of years, and I know we can count on your enthusiastic commentary with us.
It's going to be fun, and I'm here for you guys and everybody. Keep the faith.
I agree with that. We'll be right back. This is Breitbart News Daily.